The only sound in the detention room was the wheezing breath of an old air conditioner, spitting out dry, sterile air. She sat there, the Haitian woman with her hands clenched tightly at the hem of her blouse, as if loosening her grip might cause her fear to unravel and spill across the floor. A mother, a nurse who had once saved lives in nursing homes across America, now detained like a criminal. No papers, no voice, no hope. And then the door opened. Heels, the sound of power, a fitted black blazer, buttoned with precision. She walked in her hair braided into a clean bun, eyes that did not flinch. Attorney Amandor, once undocumented, now the legal voice for those still labeled America's problem. But this time, someone didn't want her on the case. Not ICE, not the government. It was her own law firm. You're about to hear a fictional story, but every detail is stitched with threads pulled from real life. From the unseen corners of immigrant detention rooms, from the quiet strength of black women who carry whole homelands in their eyes and the weight of America in their hearts. If stories of justice, immigration, and silent power matter to you, make sure to subscribe. This story isn't just to be heard. It's meant to be remembered, to move you. And if you have a story the world needs to hear, drop it in the comments. You might just be the voice behind our next episode. She stepped out of the interrogation room with no visible emotion, but her left hand gripped the leather folder just a little tighter. Inside it, a suppressed statement. One they had accidentally left out of discovery. A single piece of evidence. That could change everything. Her colleagues dressed in tailored suits and armed with Ivy League diplomas had told her, "Amma, these cases, they're not worth the risk." But Amma had lived with risk since she was a child. When you've once crawled through storm drains to evade immigration raids in Queens, you understand something. Justice is never safe. Amma stood still in front of the whiteboard in the small conference room of the immigration law firm. The morning light cut through the blinds, casting golden lines across her auburn braided hair, soft like honey. In her left hand, she held a worn-out USB drive. In her right, a thick folder, topped with a crumpled passport photo, taped to a black and white photocopy with old, yellowing tape. The face in the photo was tired, resigned. A Haitian woman whose eyes had crossed both oceans and Border Patrol hands. She has no tax records, no insurance, no verifiable employment as a nurse. Weak file, no legal grounds. Drop it. The voice was male, flat, cold. It came from across the table. Mark, white, 39, always in designer ties, always pretending not to hear the sighs of humanity. Amma said nothing. She simply laid the paper down quietly, not to persuade, just to ensure that anyone who wanted to see it could, and anyone who ignored it could never say they didn't know. That morning, the hallway outside felt longer than usual. The intake office at the end, where she'd first met Marie, now seemed distant, like the memory of a storm that had already passed through. Marie had been thin, storm-worn, her voice quieter than her presence. She opened her wallet and pulled out a wrinkled dollar, tucked between two photos, one of her second-grade son and another, her old hospital ID badge. Expired, laminated, still intact, a fragile artifact of dignity. Amma had once held a badge like that. Too. Had once handed over a blurry photocopy to an immigration officer, trembling, praying they wouldn't ask too many questions. Amma understood, not from law school, but from the inside, from nights curled on attic floors in the Bronx, listening to ICE helicopters fly overhead. She had once lived in the in-between, not legal, not non-existent, just tolerated. The meeting ended without a single word directed at her. They stood, walked past her like she was just another unused chair in an overcrowded room. Silence, but not meaningless. To Amma, silence was the signal of systems. No open rejection. No support either. Not forbidden. Not encouraged. They didn't want her on Marie's case, because it was unwinnable. Because Marie had nothing but her loyalty to a country that didn't claim her. And because Amma didn't look like them. Didn't talk like them. Didn't come from legacy names or Ivy League halls or Thursday night Rotary Club mixers. She was an insider, but never one of them. Amma walked out with the USB in her hand. Her fingers were cold, but her steps did not falter. She didn't need their approval. She only needed the law and a little light. Amma's office sat tucked into a corner of the 3rd floor, next to the copy room, a space others called temporary. She liked it. The faint whir of printers, the rushed footsteps of paralegals, and now and then, the quiet sigh of someone hoping their asylum form had gone through. She sat at her desk, powered on the screen, and inserted the faded USB. A folder popped up. Dorlayan. Full intake. The first file was a recording shaky audio from an old phone. Marie's voice crackled, soft but unwavering. I came in 2007 on a tourist visa. I stayed because my mother got sick. She didn't speak English. There was no one else. I had no choice. Amma closed her eyes. She had heard that sentence in 100 forms from women in nail salons in Georgia, housekeepers in Arizona, from herself, at 14, when her mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and she'd had to take a janitorial job instead of going to school. No one leaves their homeland for fun. They leave because staying is no longer an option. She opened the second file, a pay stub from 2015. Name Marie Dorlayan. Job certified nursing assistant. Hours worked 36 a week. Facility a small hospital outside Miami. Legal proof of labor, but no social security number, no papers. To an immigration court, that meant almost nothing. Amma tapped the desk lightly. She knew what they would say, forged documents. System fraud. Ghost in the system. They wouldn't see the patients Marie had bathed, the elderly she'd held through their final breaths, because they never wanted to see. She clicked into one final folder and paused. A PDF, not from Marie, from an anonymous email, sent to Amma's personal address 3 weeks ago. Subject for your eyes only. Internal memo, ICE. It was a memo between ICE officers. A request to prioritize deportation for 3 names, Marie Dorlayan among them. Next to her name, low media risk. Amma's stomach turned. This wasn't justice. This was targeting. Deciding who gets to vanish based on silence. She stood, poured a glass of water. Outside, the sky had cleared. Sunlight pooled on the old wooden floor, like a ribbon of brightness through dense trees. She stepped toward the whiteboard behind her door and wrote in black marker. Time of arrest, any justification. Audio voice verifiable. ICE memo confirm sender. And at the bottom, don't let them disappear in silence. She stepped back, looked at the board. Her eyes held no doubt, no tremble. Marie wouldn't be the first. And if Amma said nothing, she wouldn't be the last. 3 o'clock. The office was thinning out. The junior associates with leather bags and genderless perfume filed out one by one, their shift with justice apparently ending at closing time. Amma stayed. She reread Marie's file, but her mind wandered 17 years back to a rainy afternoon at a bus stop, where she and her mother stood holding a grocery bag and a misaddressed envelope. That was the day they learned their residency request had been denied. Reason: insufficient ties to country of origin. Her mother hadn't cried, hadn't spoken. She just squeezed Amma's hand, tighter, as if letting go would mean vanishing. Amma shook her head. The past doesn't get stored away. It lingers, like steam behind a mirror fading, then reappearing. A knock at the door. She turned. Julia, the new intern, Guatemalan. Quiet, meticulous, always jotting notes in Spanish to later translate into English. "Ms. Amma, someone left this for you at the front desk." Julia placed a pale yellow envelope on the desk. No return address. Amma opened it. Inside was a copy of an asylum application dated 2010. Name Marie d'Orléans. The signature shaky but real. Application denied. 3 days late. There was also a handwritten note. "If someone's trying to bury this, I believe you're the only one who won't look away." No name. Amma sat in silence. Something was shifting like water stirred by a single stone. Not everyone was silent. Not everyone was blind. She placed the asylum letter next to the ICE memo. They didn't align, but both were real. Someone was trying to say something. Amma stood, grabbed her coat, and stepped out. The hallway lights flickered with dim gold. Her heels echoed slow, certain. No one saw her off. No one said goodbye. She didn't need permission. Tomorrow, she would go to ICE, and they would have to hear her speak. The elevator dinged softly as it opened onto the 6th floor of the federal building. Amma stepped out, carrying a thick folder and an unblinking gaze. She wore a dark brown suit, clean cut, no frills, and her heels clicked a steady rhythm against the icy granite floor. At the end of the hall, the silver-blue logo of ICE Immigration and Customs Enforcement gleamed like a blade. This wasn't her first time here. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't here to negotiate. She came to hear how far they were willing to lie. A young white receptionist glanced at her ID, nodded politely cautiously, and gestured toward a glass room at the end of the corridor. "Miss Endor, they're waiting in room 3. The door opened. Inside were 3 people. 2 men in suits. 1 blonde woman in a pale blue blouse. No one stood. No one offered a handshake. Amma pulled out a chair and sat. The table between them was smooth, cold, too clean to feel real. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Endor," the woman began, her voice flat as a readout. "We understand you're representing an individual named Marie d'Orléans." "Not an individual," Amma replied, eyes still on her file. "A mother, a nurse, a contributor to this country. She just doesn't have the paperwork to prove it." Silence. One of the men furrowed his brow. The other began typing on a laptop. "This case has already been flagged for expedited removal," the man said. It met all the internal criteria. Amma pulled a printed sheet from her folder. She slid it across the table, turned it toward them. "You mean this internal criteria?" she asked. "The memo dated March 3rd, that recommends prioritizing people deemed low media risk." She looked up directly at the blonde woman. "What defines that risk?" "No American relatives, no Twitter account. Or is it just being black?" Silence again, only the low hum of the ceiling vent. Amma nodded slowly. She hadn't expected an admission. She knew this system never apologized. It just changed tactics when forced to. The man on the right tapped his keyboard. "This document isn't an official release, not verifiable." "Exactly," Amma said. "And I don't need you to verify it. I just need you to consider how it'll look when it's submitted at the hearing next week." Her voice never rose. She didn't slam the table, but her words hit like a silent detonation. Amma stood, neatly gathered her things. "I'll be at that hearing," she said, "and I'll be calling witnesses. Not just Marie, but the head nurse from her former hospital, her night supervisor, and the immigration attorney who declined to represent her because this case wasn't good optics." She paused, one last look at them. "The question isn't whether you'll let her stay. It's how you'll try to make her disappear, quietly or with resistance." She opened the door, walked out. No one called after her, no one followed. Amma didn't need applause. She needed silence, the kind that meant someone, somewhere, was now afraid. The elevator carried her down floor by floor. When the doors opened, evening light spilled through the lobby and onto her face. She squinted, took a breath. Tomorrow would be long, but she hadn't come here to plead. She came to remind the system someone was watching. Amma returned to the office just before dusk. The hallway stretched out ahead, quiet and half-lit. Only the soft buzz of the HVAC and her own heels echoed behind her. No one greeted her. No one looked up, as if she hadn't been gone. She didn't go straight to her office. Instead, she turned left into the women's restroom. The door clicked shut behind her, and for a moment, she just stood there. Still. Not to cry, but to hear her own breathing. To remind herself she was still human, not just a vessel of law and strategy. She let the water run cold over her hands. Splashed her face, not bothering to look in the mirror. She knew that face, no makeup, no armor. The face that had once slept in church basements. The face that had avoided police headlights like lasers. The face that had learned how to look straight ahead even when doubt stormed behind the eyes. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. No contact. No city code. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello." Only breath at first, then a woman's voice. Soft. Fast. Real. "Ms. Endower, I don't have long, but don't let Marie go to that hearing next week." Amma straightened. "Who is this?" "I used to work for ICE. In records. I saw that memo, the one you have. Her name's listed. Marked as low media risk. They use that phrase to justify fast removals. Quiet ones." The voice trembled slightly, like it belonged to someone looking over her shoulder. "If you present that memo in court, they'll know. They'll move. And Marie, she might not make it to the hearing." "What do you mean, not make it?" "They've done it before. 2 others. I knew one from Colombia, one from Cameroon. No papers. No family. No one watching. They vanished. Just like files deleted from a system." Amma's pulse surged. "What's your name?" "I can't say. If they trace this." Click. Dead air. Amma stared at the screen, called back, disconnected. She walked quickly to her office, locked the door, closed the blinds. On her screen was the ICE memo. She opened it again. Read the line for the 13th time. "Priority expedite removal. Subject is not flagged for media risk." Not because Marie was dangerous, but because no one was supposed to care. Amma leaned forward at her desk. Thought of her mother. Of the hundreds of names she'd helped the names erased in silence. Then she opened her email. To Julia Mejia, subject urgent. Internal ICE verification. Message. Do you know anyone who used to work in ICE records? Need verification? Discretion required. Urgent. She clicked send. Then opened a drawer. Pulled out an old photo, her and her mother, at a Bronx subway station in 2005. Raincoats, grocery bags. No smiles, just eyes that never flinched. She set it beside her keyboard. They hadn't survived the dark to forget it. They survived it to pull someone else out. Night fell faster than Amma expected. The sky outside her office window turned the color of navy cloth, stitched faintly with the glow of streetlights. Inside, her desk lamp cast a warm but insufficient light, barely pushing back the chill creeping in from within. She had just emailed Julia and was reviewing the Marie case summary again. Time was closing in. 6 days until the hearing. 6 days to fight not just ICE, but those smiling 2 floors below. Her desk phone rang. Not an outside number, an internal extension. Reception. Ms. Endower, there's someone here to see you. No appointment. He says he's an old friend. What's his name? Lucian. Her throat clenched. Lucian. She mouthed the name like a forgotten lyric. How long had it been? 10 years? 12? He had been both shadow and light. A lifeline in the darkest stretch of her undocumented years. A man who once made the sirens feel distant. A face she hadn't seen since he vanished no goodbye. No explanation. She stood, ran fingers through her hair to steady herself, then walked down the corridor. The elevator opened like a memory trap. Lucian stood by the lobby window, tall, broad-shouldered, still, his hair now peppered with gray. No smile, no wave, just waiting. Amma stopped 3 paces away. No step forward, no retreat. Lucian. He nodded, eyes locked. Sorry for showing up unannounced. You always did that. Silence, not hostile, just unresolved. I heard about Marie's case. Lucienne said, I still have a few friends in the system. They told me ICE is planning to reclassify her case, meaning transfer her out of state to a temporary detention site. No notice to you. How do you know? I used to work with someone in that department, and because I was once a target too. The words hit like a hidden truth cracking open. Amma didn't ask for proof. She just looked at him. All the questions burned behind her eyes. Why did you leave? Did you know what I went through? Why now? But she asked none of them. This wasn't about pain. This was about survival. So, why are you here? She asked. As an old friend, a witness, or someone caught in between. Lucian pulled a folded packet from his coat. Full version of the ICE memo with a final line she hadn't seen. Transfer to Facility C, North Dakota. By 0430, no attorney notification. Her fingers trembled as she took it, not from fear, from fury. How did you get this? He didn't answer, just said, Last time, I kept quiet when they took my sister at the border. I lost her forever. I won't stay silent again. Amma looked at him, and the lobby went still like a church after a funeral. There was no romance here, only 2 people who knew what it meant to be erased. Will you testify? Lucian nodded. If you'll let me stand beside you again. This time, Amma didn't say no. Courtroom 4A in the city's federal immigration court was built for silence. No windows, low ceiling, wooden pew-like benches, harder, colder, and no one prayed. This place wasn't made to listen. It was made to make you question whether you even had the right to speak. Amma entered at 8:45 a.m. Sharp black suit, no jewelry, hair pinned in a tight bun, her face calm, unreadable. The folder in her hand was twice the thickness of a standard case file, not to impress, but to be ready to slap back at whatever they tried to hide under procedure. Marie was already seated on the front bench, her hands clutched together, eyes lowered to the floor. She wore a faded brown dress and canvas shoes with a fraying heel. Her hair was braided neatly, perhaps the only part of her life still within her control. Across the aisle, the ICE representative, a thin man with a silver buzz cut, typed something into his laptop, never looking up. Amma didn't glance twice. She didn't need to. They were all the same, clean, neutral, expressionless. Like empathy had been trained out of them in a 3-week onboarding seminar. A court clerk entered, calling out, "Judge Martin will be 15 minutes late. All parties, please remain seated." Amma sat beside Marie. She said nothing. She simply placed a gentle hand on Marie's back, just long enough to say, "You're not alone." Each second dragged like footsteps on cracked ice. The door opened. Judge Martin White, 52, known for keeping emotions out of proceedings, entered briskly. He nodded, took his seat, arranged a few papers, and adjusted his glasses. "This is the removal hearing for Marie d'Orléans, represented by Attorney Endor. ICE represented by Mr. Granger. We begin." His voice was monotone, a human fax machine. "Mr. Granger, any preliminary motions?" Granger stood. "Your Honor, we've received recent indications that Ms. d'Orléans may not be mentally competent to testify. We move to delay the hearing for a psychological evaluation." Amma looked up. Her eyes were cold and precise. "Your Honor," she replied. Voice firm. "ICE has provided no medical documents to support this claim. I submit the latest health report from her primary physician, confirming Ms. d'Orléans is mentally fit and able to testify." She placed the report on the table with a quiet thud, soft, but sharp enough to break the pretense. "This motion is not based on evidence. It is a stalling tactic." Judge Martin glanced between them, then spoke. "Submit all health records within 24 hours. Hearing will resume tomorrow morning." He banged the gavel. Once. Amma remained seated. Marie kept her head down. ICE didn't look their way. They had won an extra day. And sometimes, a day is all they need. Amma waited until the courtroom was empty. She and Marie were the last to leave. In the hallway, Julia waited, phone in hand. "Amma, I got a response. Someone's willing to confirm the memo, but only in person. They're 4 blocks away, an old laundromat called Bella Wash." Amma nodded. She turned to Marie. "Go home. Rest. Tomorrow. We keep going. You've come too far to stop now." Marie didn't speak, but this time, she looked Amma in the eyes. There was fear, but also something more. Trust. Fragile, but real. Amma stepped outside. The air was crisp, the light gray. She didn't know who she was about to meet, but she knew this. Whoever was trying to bury this case didn't want Marie alive long enough to testify, which meant now, more than ever, the truth needed a witness. Amma walked quickly down the street, wind brushing past her lapels. The midday crowd was busy, coffee in hand, AirPods in ears, unaware that just a few blocks away, someone's future was dangling by a single breath. She stopped in front of Bella Wash, a worn laundromat with a sagging wooden sign. On the glass door, a faded decal read, "We speak English and Spanish, but also listen in silence." Amma smirked faintly, then stepped in. Inside, the air was thick with steam, detergent, and age. The old washers rattled like stubborn bones. The rhythm of metal against metal, steady and hollow, filled the quiet. At the far back, beside the largest dryer, a woman sat folding towels, gray button down, jeans, low bun. She looked up and Amma froze. "Isabelle." The woman's brow furrowed at the sound of her name. "Amma, my God, you still recognize me." Isabelle Joseph, once her mother's co-worker back in their Bronx cleaning days. She had sheltered Amma after an ICE raid in 2008, then vanished. Amma thought she'd been deported. I thought you were gone. I thought you'd never come back to this part of the city. They stood there, not knowing whether to hug or to hold space. Finally, Isabelle spoke first. Julia contacted me. She mentioned Marie and your name. I knew it was time to stop being silent. Amma sat on a rickety wooden chair near the machine. The warmth from the dryer flushed her cheeks. The memo, you saw the original. I did. I used to work in ICE data processing. I was the one told to clean it. Clean. Erase names, records, communication logs. Shift people into a status labeled removable without legal contact. I asked why. They said, for operational efficiency. I asked back, efficient for whom? Amma didn't speak. She didn't clench her fists, didn't tap her knee, just sat still like a tree yanked from its roots. Isabelle pulled a brown paper folder from a cabinet nearby, inside the full memo, with electronic signatures and one bolded line. No legal counsel contact permitted prior to movement. Target M, Dorleon, transfer, level immediate. I'm ready to testify, Isabelle said, but not remotely. No emails. I'll come to court if you're willing to put me on that stand. Amma nodded. No words, just eyes glowing with something steady, a signal flare in fog. Before Amma left, she turned back. Are you afraid? Isabelle smiled, weary but proud. I was afraid when they took my sister. All she wanted was to learn to braid hair. They said she was too quiet to fight for. That's when I knew silence doesn't protect anyone. She walked Amma to the door. Rain had begun to fall gentle, cold. Isabelle placed a hand on Amma's shoulder. You are the voice we never had. Don't let them take it from you. Amma stepped outside. Rain soaked her coat, but she didn't flinch. Each drop fell like punctuation quiet, insistent. In her hand now evidence, but more than that, a door reopened, from the past, and this time, she wasn't closing it. Amma returned to the office just as the rain stopped. The sky hung low and wrinkled like crumpled gray fabric. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered in their usual dullness, but her chest felt wired. She placed Isabelle's folder on her desk. The brown paper, soft at the edges, was heavier than any legal brief. It wasn't just evidence, it was a blade. She sat, hands resting on the folder, unopened. In her head, 2 clocks ticking. Isabelle is the only one who can verify the memo, but she's undocumented. If Amma brought her to court, ICE could detain her on the spot. The woman who once sheltered her might be deported because of her. But if she didn't bring her forward, the memo would be dismissed unverified origin, and Marie's case would vanish like thousands before it. Amma closed her eyes. She saw her mother coat too thin for the Bronx wind, holding a grocery bag in a child's hand, looking ahead like there was no road back. She had once chosen silence, back when ICE raided a church basement and she'd hidden beneath the communion wine crates, heard people being dragged away, and said nothing. If she stayed silent again, every case she'd ever won would be a lie. A knock. Julia. Amma, ICE just called asking if you'll be naming any new witnesses. I didn't know what to say. Amma glanced at the clock. 5:42 p.m. Too early for routine, too late for coincidence. Tell them I'll submit my witness list by the close of business tomorrow, not a minute before. Julia nodded and left. Amma walked to the whiteboard behind her door, the old phrase still there. Don't let them disappear in silence. She wiped it clean, then wrote, Someone is listening. They need to see us show up. She picked up her phone, dialed. Rings 3. Isabelle's voice gravel soft, but unwavering. Hello, Isabelle. I need to ask you again. And this time, it's real. Ask. If you testify, you could be detained. They might ask for your address. They could send you away. Pause. Then, steady as stone. Amma, if they deport me for telling the truth, then at least this time, I'll leave as a person, not a deleted file. Amma closed her eyes, felt the words settle in her spine. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. At my office, I'll draft the witness protection motion. We won't be silent anymore. A chuckle from Isabelle. It's been a while since I heard that fire in your voice. Same here. It's been a while since I remembered why I do this. Amma hung up, opened her laptop, and started typing. Every sentence was a crack in the mask of a system that had hidden too long behind rules. She didn't know how tomorrow would unfold. She only knew. Truth doesn't have to scream. It just has to be said clearly, and without shaking. That morning, the law office looked just like any other day-week coffee. The clatter of the photocopier, heels clicking on tiled floors. No one knew that today. A truth would walk through the door in the flesh, undocumented, unscheduled, but enough to rattle an entire system used to nameless files and silent exits. Amma arrived earlier than usual. She printed 3 copies of the expected affidavit, prepped the witness protection motion, and left warm water in the small meeting room. Her hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but because she knew today, the law would be tested not by lies, but by a living person. 9:58 a.m. The glass door opened. Isabelle walked in. No one paid attention to the middle-aged woman in a beige coat and gray scarf, walking slowly but surely. But Amma saw her. She stepped out of her office just as Isabelle crossed the threshold, as if intuition had cleared the way. "You're right on time," Amma said, a faint smile like a quiet handshake. "I'm always on time when the truth needs to be heard," Isabelle replied, gaze steady like someone who's already weathered the storm. Amma led her to the small meeting room. No windows, a round wooden table, 2 chairs, a water jug, no cameras, no recorders. But the silence here was thick enough to slice with a knife. "Are you certain about this?" Amma asked. One last time. Isabelle didn't answer immediately. She opened her bag, pulled out a handwritten affidavit, signed and dated. She placed it on the table. "I don't need to be certain. I just need to be right." Amma nodded. She began preparing the emergency witness protection file to submit, but not 15 minutes later. Julia burst through the door. "Amma, someone from the managing partner's office is here. They said there's an urgent internal inquiry about the eligibility of witnesses in immigration cases." Amma frowned. "Who?" "Mark." That name landed like a stone dropped in still water. Not loud, but enough to make hidden currents swirl. Amma stood, adjusted her blazer. She knew this would not be a shouting match. This would be a chess game where the one who stays silent longer wins. 3rd floor conference room. Mark stood there, holding a coffee cup with the lid still on, face alert in a way that raised suspicion. "Hello, Amma." "What's this about?" she asked directly. "I've been informed that you're preparing to submit a witness with unverified legal status." Amma didn't deny it. "I'm finalizing the protection motion. It will be filed before the hearing." Mark sipped. "Amma, we're not a nonprofit. We're a law firm. We exist because we know when to step forward and when to step back." "Are you asking me to step back?" "I'm asking you to consider what happens to your case. If that witness is detained, right in court." Amma looked him dead in the eye. "I'm not afraid of losing a case. I'm afraid of staying silent and losing who I am." Mark didn't argue. He placed the cup on the table, then said, slowly, "Sometimes, to stay in the game, you have to accept that the rules weren't written for us." Amma answered, just as slow. "And sometimes, to change the rules, you have to walk away from the table they built." She returned to the room. Isabelle was still there, not asking questions, not backing out. She was folding her scarf neatly, like someone preparing to walk on stage. Amma placed a hand on her shoulder. "We're not retreating. We're just changing where we stand so they have to see us." Isabelle nodded. They didn't know if the court would accept the motion, but they knew this today. They showed up. And sometimes, in a system designed to make you disappear, just showing up is a revolutionary act. Amma stepped out of the taxi at the base of the federal courthouse with the bearing of someone who had just written a declaration, not with a megaphone, not with a banner, but with 3 black and white pages, neatly stapled. She wore a charcoal gray suit formal enough to command attention, soft enough to disarm. Not black, like her first day, because today wasn't for defense. It was for attack, with presence. The courthouse was not crowded. The elevator was empty. The hallways whispered in silence. But Amma knew the ears and eyes here weren't hidden in walls or cameras. They lived in how documents were passed, in the way a nod could mean goodwill, and in the kind of silence that lasted just long enough to mean, "There's a problem with this file." She approached the clerk's desk, a white woman in her 30s. Blonde hair parted down the middle, stood behind the counter. A nameplate on her chest read, "On Norwood." "I'm Amma Endower. I'm here to file a witness protection motion, the Marie d'Orléans case. It includes the affidavit, Form 17.2c, and related evidence." Ms. Norwood didn't look at Amma. She took the documents and began flipping through them, checking boxes on the screen. Each time she typed, Amma felt it in her chest, like fists knocking at a locked door. Then she reached the witness page. Witness name Isabelle Joseph. She paused, a tiny silence. No personal identification number. She has no current legal documentation. Legal residence. Amma held her gaze. That's not the basis of the motion. I understand. But under Addendum 17.2cb, effective as of the 1st of this month, any witness without identification must appear in person for verification. Amma frowned. That addendum isn't listed in the public access system for attorneys. I checked this morning, there was no mention of that requirement. It was issued in an internal session, not yet published, but it's effective and mandatory. Amma stood still, spine straight. A slow ache began at her back and spread downward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. She simply thought. So they've built another fence. A fence that appears only when the truth-bearer is the wrong kind of valid. Not because the words are false, but because the person speaking was never meant to exist in the system. She reached into her bag, pulled out a copy of the amendment, and placed it on the desk. I will file a formal appeal if this motion is denied based on an unpublished directive. You're entitled to do so. Same even voice, same eyes avoiding hers, only the fingers typed faster, as if trying to hurry Amma out of line. Amma left the courthouse. The motion had been filed, but nothing felt secure. That evening, the law office was quiet. Julia had gone home early. The radio in the front room murmured a sudden deportation in Florida. A mother separated from her 2 born sons. No explanation. No one accountable. Amma walked into the small meeting room. Isabelle was there, holding a cup of hot tea, her hair down. She didn't ask anything. She just looked. What happened? Her voice was hoarse but gentle. Amma set the document down on the table. She didn't sit. They're requiring you to appear in court and verify your identity, or the protection request won't be valid. A pause. You mean, they want me to walk in front of them, say my name, birth date, undocumented status, so they have a reason to detain me? Amma nodded. Her eyes stayed on Isabelle's hands. They clenched the cup, gently. They call it verification, Amma said softly. But really, it's just a lock disguised as procedure. A polite way of saying, if you weren't born into this system, you can't testify for anyone within it. Isabelle didn't respond right away. She stood and walked to the window. You know, she spoke, eyes on the gray sky. The hardest part isn't deportation. The hardest part is surviving here for 15 years working, paying taxes, staying out of trouble but never really being seen. Invisibility wears you down more slowly than hunger ever could. Amma stood frozen. All those years at Harvard Law hadn't taught her this, the erosion of a nameless existence. And now, if I step into the light, they'll have cause to remove me. But if I stay silent, Marie won't be allowed to remain. Amma's hands curled into fists. I'll stand beside you. I'll file for interim protection. I'll pull media if I have to. Isabelle turned and smiled, not out of relief, but recognition. I don't need the media. I just need someone who believes in me enough to put my name in ink. Amma replied gently. I already have. The next morning, the federal courthouse was painted in steel gray light. No rain, but the air was thick like a held breath in a crowded room. Amma and Isabelle arrived at exactly 8:25 a.m. Neither of them said much, but every glance, every steady inhale between them carried the same message. This wasn't just a verification, it was a crossing. Isabelle wore a gray sweater beneath an old beige trench coat, hair tied low, no makeup, no heels. She wasn't trying to perform. She was here to exist unapologetically. They entered the lobby. A security guard raised his hand for ID. Amma presented hers. Isabelle stood still. She's with me, Amma said. She's scheduled for witness verification, file 17.206B. The guard glanced at Isabelle for a second. Didn't speak, just nodded. No alarm, no hand on the elbow, but that nod said everything. We see you. The witness verification room was on the 4th floor. Pale gray door. Black lettered sign, immigration case. Witness verification. They stepped inside. The room looked like a waiting area in a public clinic, plastic chairs in rows. Cool blue lighting. No visible clock. A kind of waiting meant to wear you down. Amma approached the check-in desk. Isabelle Joseph, scheduled for verification. We have the file number. The woman behind the desk nodded and typed. She wore thin metal-rimmed glasses, platinum hair, and spoke like a pre-recorded message. Miss Joseph, please wait in the seating area. You'll be called into room 4B. Amma leaned in and whispered. I'll be right here. You won't be alone. Isabelle nodded, then sat down in the second row back straight, hands folded. She didn't move much, like a stone taken from shadow and set in sunlight, unsure whether to melt or to remain still. Half an hour passed. Then a male voice called from the door. Isabelle Joseph. She rose, walked steadily, without rush or hesitation. Amma followed one step behind. Just as they reached the threshold of room 4B, the man at the door squinted. Tall, white, mid-40s, crew cut, standard issue shirt and tie. His eyes flickered not because he recognized a witness, but because he remembered something. Wait, I know you. Isabelle paused. Amma tilted her head. What did you say? The man studied her face a moment longer. You used to clean the offices. Detention Unit 9. Bronx. Back in '08. Isabelle swallowed. Yes. Thursdays. You brought a little girl. She'd sit in the lobby. Crayons and coloring books. Amma turned, surprised. That was you. Isabelle nodded quietly. The man didn't speak for a second. His eyes now held something unreadable sympathy. Maybe. Or suspicion. Why are you here? Today. Amma stepped in. She's here as a witness, a lawful participant in a legal proceeding. That's all you need to know. He didn't argue, just stepped back. His nod this time was stiff. Proceed to verification room 4B. The room was small, one table, 2 plastic chairs, no recording device, but the ceiling camera pointed straight down. Another woman entered official, composed, clipboard in hand. Please state your full name, date of birth, and current address. Isabelle took a breath. My name is Isabelle Joseph. Born March 9th, 1976. Current residence is undocumented. I live in Brooklyn, near Prospect Avenue. I've lived here since 2006. The clerk didn't blink, just typed. Do you acknowledge that your legal status is not currently verified in DHS systems? I do. But I'm here because a young woman, not me, is about to be erased by the same silence I once survived. One look up. A few more keystrokes. No objections. No threats. But the way Isabelle sat upright, the way she pronounced every word with calm conviction, that was how a silent woman takes the stand. After the verification, they exited the building without a word. Outside, the sun had emerged, a soft gold, quiet but certain. Isabelle closed her eyes for a moment, breathed in. I didn't think saying my name would leave me this exhausted. Amma smiled. That's because you didn't just say your name. You reminded an entire system that you never disappeared. You were just waiting for the right moment to be seen. That morning, the sky was dull, not dark, not stormy. Just that flat, indifferent gray that makes you forget what season it is. Amma wore a high-collar shirt, one button left undone, and a rust-colored suit. Her hair was tied back tightly, not as armor, but as declaration. I'm not here to persuade. I'm here to expose. Outside the courtroom, Isabelle sat quietly. Her gray blouse was modest, sleeves slightly frayed. But the way she sat back straight, hands still, she could have passed for a professor, not a woman who'd lived in hiding for 15 years. Amma looked at her, then returned to the folder. Inside the verified affidavit, the witness protection motion, and the photo of Marie, a child with eyes that always seemed to be asking, do I have the right to exist? They're about to call us, Amma whispered. Isabelle didn't respond. She simply breathed. A long breath, like someone trying to hold their bones together. 9:42. They entered the courtroom. It wasn't a large one. 3 rows of wooden benches. The judge's bench elevated by nearly a meter. The presiding judge, Greta L. Moreland, was a white woman in her 50s, with silver hair tied low. Her face wasn't unkind, but not soft either. Amma delivered the opening statement. Her voice didn't rise, but every syllable hit the air like knuckles on glass, not loud, but impossible to ignore. Your Honor, my witness is Ms. Isabelle Joseph. Though she lacks legal documentation, she has lived in Brooklyn since 2006, possesses verifiable personal history, and is the sole witness to the illegal intimidation of minor Marie d'Orléans. We're not asking for a favor. We're asking to be heard. ICE's representative, a white man with gray-streaked hair named Douglas Hale, stood before Amma's final word had settled. Your Honor, this witness is neither a citizen nor a legal resident. Allowing Ms. Joseph to testify legitimizes unlawful presence and creates dangerous precedent. Judge Moreland nodded calmly. Ms. Endower, response. Amma paused, then spoke low, unwavering. So the question becomes, do we judge the truth or the person speaking it? If justice only belongs to those with a number, then millions of nameless people will never be protected. Then came the testimony. Isabelle took the stand. The silence wasn't respect. It was doubt, anticipation, suspicion. The clerk asked standard questions. Isabelle answered with restraint, nothing more than needed. Then came the heart of it. Were you present on March 12th at Detention Center 8 when Marie d'Orléans was brought in for questioning? Yes. What did you witness? She looked at the judge. A 14-year-old girl, no lawyer, no guardian, questioned by 3 adults in a windowless room. She said she was a refugee. They called her a liar. I offered to be a witness. They threatened me, said I could be deported too. Douglas Hale jumped up. Your Honor, this witness is confessing to unlawful presence. Her testimony is invalid. Judge Moreland raised her hand. Continue. Isabelle inhaled. I know I have no right to be here, but I was there. I have no documents, but I have memory. And if that's not enough to be a witness, maybe this system was never built to hear people like me. The courtroom froze. Not with formality, but the kind of silence that falls when someone speaks something so undeniable it rearranges the room. Amma looked across. She saw Judge Moreland's eyes shift, saw a young clerk lower her head. Even Hale stepped back slightly, like he too had heard something the system had tried to silence. A story, without a visa, without ID, only the truth. When Isabelle stepped down from the witness stand, the courtroom hadn't yet recovered. No applause, no gasp, just the sound of a clerk dropping her pen, the only audible thing, as if the room had finally heard its own heartbeat. Judge Moreland leaned back slightly, flipped a page, and said, "The court will recess for 20 minutes to review the emergency motion. We are adjourned." The gavel struck. Amma turned to Isabelle. She didn't need to speak, just one slight nod. Isabelle understood. A nod that meant thank you. I'm sorry, and I'm still here. Amma was about to follow Isabelle out of the courtroom when a man in a black dress shirt approached her. Ms. Endower, there's someone from Homeland Security requesting a private meeting. Room 2B, 3rd floor. No official letter, no attorney invitation. The kind of meeting you don't decline. Amma glanced at Isabelle, then nodded. I'll be right back. Room 2B had no nameplate, white walls, no windows, no warmth. Inside sat a brown-skinned man in his 50s, white dress shirt, gray tie, paper coffee cup in hand, like it was just another Monday morning. Have a seat. I'm Dean Walters, Senior Counsel for ICE Northeast Division. Amma didn't sit. She stood tall, fingers clasped, eyes steady. We've been following this case for a while, Dean began. You're talented, respected. I read your essay in Harvard Law Review. No reaction. He exhaled, placed the coffee on the table. I get what you're doing. Truly. Everyone wants to protect children, but the system has limits. Still, silence. Let me be direct. If you remove Isabelle Joseph from the motion, we'll ensure your federal law license remains clean, and the d'Orléans child's deportation will be delayed 6 months under special consideration. Amma didn't move. You don't have to reply. Just don't file additional documents. That'll be our signal. Silence. Heavy. Measured. like a curtain lowering over a truth. Dean stood, stepped forward. I was the first black law student in my class at South Carolina State. I know how the system works. And I know, sometimes, survival means knowing when to step back. Amma finally spoke softly, clearly. I didn't go into law to survive. I went into law so others wouldn't have to disappear. Dean fell quiet, in his eyes, surprise, and maybe a flicker of regret. Then you've chosen the hard path, but that's your right. When Amma walked back into the hallway, her hands were trembling, not from fear, but because a single thought thudded in her chest. The price of someone's peace is almost always someone else's erasure. 20 minutes later, court resumed. Judge Moreland returned, unreadable. Having reviewed the testimony and emergency petition, the court grants temporary admissibility of Ms. Isabelle Joseph's witness statement, pending review by the Federal Witness Protection Commission. A breath of relief spread across the room. Someone held someone else's hand. A tissue quietly passed from one lap to another. Amma stood tall. Isabelle didn't cry, but her hands clasped tightly together. Then the judge added, Ms. Joseph is not to leave the state of New York during proceedings. ICE is ordered to provide basic protection to prevent unlawful detainment. Douglas Hale almost rose to object but sat back down. He knew any protest now would read as coercion. When the hearing ended, Amma stepped out first. Isabelle followed her pace steady, not fast, not hesitant. As they neared the courthouse steps, a small group of people gathered. No shouting, no cameras, just faces, perhaps other immigrants. Silent witnesses watching Isabelle, like she'd walked out of a myth they weren't sure could be real. An older black woman gently touched Isabelle's arm. You don't know what you've just done. You opened a door for those of us who thought we'd die in the dark. Isabelle gripped Amma's hand. They think I'm a witness. But I think I just gave testimony against a system that never wanted to hear. Amma smiled, not in victory, but because a woman without a country had just left her fingerprint on the face of justice. 2 days after the hearing, something shifted at the office. People didn't look at Amma, they looked away. The coffee station was suddenly empty. Doors stayed shut longer. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when she entered. Even Julia, her teammate, her friend, handed her a file without eye contact. Amma understood. ICE had countered. That morning, she received a terse email. Subject: an internal inquiry, confidential. Please report to conference room 11C at 10:45 a.m. today. Human Resources. No explanation, no attachments, no CCs. It wasn't an invitation, it was a signal. 11:45 a.m., room 11C. No windows. Dim light. Inside were Carrie Talbot, white, fellow Harvard alum, one-time friend, and the first to go quiet when Amma mentioned ICE surveillance. Next to her sat Rebecca Lee from HR, expressionless, hands folded. Amma, Carrie began. We've received reports you've had off-record contact with an undocumented witness. There's also an allegation that you previously lived unlawfully in the U.S. Is that correct? Amma's voice was firm. Who sent that in? Rebecca interrupted. We can't disclose sources, but the nature of the claims is serious. Company attorneys must not represent individuals with whom they have undisclosed personal conflicts. Amma smiled, not with joy, but recognition. They dug up my old file, found out I lived undocumented in 2005, found out a nurse hid me, and now, because I represent someone like I used to be, they call it a conflict of interest. Carrie looked at her notes. Amma, no one's accusing you of unethical conduct, but partners are asking. Are you using your position to turn unqualified individuals into legal witnesses? The air sliced cold. Amma took a breath, turned to Rebecca. I was undocumented once, but that doesn't cancel my conscience. And if tomorrow, Marie d'Orléans gets to stay because Isabelle Joseph took the stand, let the record show I lit that match. Neither woman responded. The coffee on the table went untouched. Amma didn't return to her desk. She climbed to the 6th floor terrace, her place for remembering why she chose this fight. The wind was sharp. The city beneath moved slowly. She took out her phone, sent one text to Carrie. Don't let them use you to erase me. That night, outside her apartment, an unmarked envelope waited. No return address. No postmark. Inside a childhood school report from Senegal. A blurry, outdated birth record, wrong year of birth. She'd never given that document to any U.S. agency. At the bottom, a handwritten note. We know you came in through the back door. Don't expect to stay in the ballroom forever. Amma folded the paper. No tears, no fear, just silence. She slid it into a drawer beneath her Harvard diploma, above her federal bar license. The next morning, something else happened. Carrie Talbot sent a public email to the entire legal team. It read, I am recusing myself from the internal inquiry against Amma Nadour. Not out of friendship, but because I've read Isabelle Joseph's testimony, and I believe truth should not be held hostage by paperwork. No reply, no comment. But later that day, someone left a coffee on Amma's desk, oat milk. One shot. No sugar, exactly how she liked it. No name, just warmth. And Amma realized silence can be used to erase you, but it can also be how someone stands beside you without having to say a word. It rained that Monday morning. Not heavily, just a misty drizzle that stuck to the windows like unanswered questions. Amma sat in her office, still replaying the night before, Isabelle's hand resting on her shoulder. The faint smile of someone who had accepted that even a courtroom didn't guarantee closure. Then the phone rang. Amma, it's Julia. We've got a problem. Her voice was low, urgent, as if she were calling from a restroom or some hallway corner where no one could hear. ICE just filed an emergency deportation order against Isabelle. Allegation fraudulent asylum record filed in 2007. Amma stood up instantly. There's no such record. She's been off the grid, never filed. I know, but they cited an old interview from someone else's file, similar name. Birth date off by a day. They're calling it a credible match. What have they done? They've summoned her to appear tomorrow morning. If she doesn't show, they have grounds for detention. Amma felt the floor shift. Not literally, but like a door was closing before anyone had a chance to touch it. 2 hours later, Amma stood at Isabelle's apartment in Flatbush, Brooklyn, 3rd floor of a building frozen in 2008. Faded beige walls, lace curtains, a tiny bookshelf holding worn French novels, and a photo of Isabelle standing by the ocean, wind in her hair, arms wrapped around 2 boys' sons, left behind in Haiti. Isabelle opened the door. She didn't ask any questions. She just looked at Amma like she already knew why she'd come. You know, don't you? Amma nodded. Isabelle poured tea, said nothing. Amma sat. No legal jargon. No clauses cited. Just 2 women, a lawyer and a witness, in the kind of silence that had said everything they needed to in previous chapters. If I don't show up at ICE, they'll say I ran. If you do, they might detain you without warning. Even if I go with a lawyer. If we bring the press, they'll think twice. The system hates being seen at 9 Isabelle's eyes didn't widen. She wasn't angry, just tired. You want to put me in public? Amma paused. I want to protect you, but I also know systems only retreat when they're forced to under light. When people are watching, Isabelle gave a slow, tight smile. I've lived in the dark for 15 years. Every time the light comes on, it tells me you still don't count. Amma didn't speak. She pulled out a faded, expired ID, her own, from 2005. I used to hide this under my mattress. Every knock on the door felt like the last one. Isabelle held it. Her hand trembled slightly. I kept it to remind myself the law isn't always just, but truth still has weight if someone is willing to speak it. Amma nodded. If you want to go tomorrow, I'll go with you. If you don't, I'll find another way. Isabelle placed her hand on Amma's. I'll go. Then this time, you won't go alone. Next morning, 6:45 ma'am. Amma woke to a message on her phone. White ICE van, no plates, parked outside Flatbush address at 5:32 a.m. She called Isabelle. No answer. Amma grabbed her coat and bag, left the house like she was the one being hunted. One thought echoed. What good is a lawyer if the truth is already detained? When Amma reached the corner of Flatbush and Clarkson, the clock read 13 ma fanta. The white van was still parked in front of Isabelle's building. No license plates. Tinted windows. A man in an ICE jacket stood beside the passenger door, hand resting casually near his waistband, where a weapon likely hid beneath his coat. Amma didn't park properly. She pulled to the curb, leaped out like a field reporter. Her bag thumped against her hip, heels drumming on the concrete like a war cry. She marched straight toward the building's entrance. One thought pounded in her head. If they take her before the court ruling, everything ends here. At the door, another ICE agent, a woman with close-cropped hair and a face like carved stone, blocked her path. Ma'am, this is an active federal operation. Attorneys are not permitted to interfere. Amma opened her wallet, flashing her bar card and an official copy of the witness protection motion. Isabelle Joseph is a court-approved witness. She has the right to legal representation and protection. Any action taken without a new warrant may violate federal protocol. The agent didn't read the paper. She stared into Amma's eyes. Ms. Joseph's file is under review. Her prior clearance may be revoked. Step back. Amma didn't budge. If you lay a hand on my client without a new court order, I will live stream this encounter. And we both know ICE doesn't like bad press before 9 No one responded. But the man across the street shifted slightly. His hand moved away from his belt. The female agent frowned, then stepped aside by 1 foot. Amma didn't wait. She sprinted up to the 3rd floor. The door was ajar. Isabelle stood in the living room, coat on, suitcase by her feet, hair tied back, face calm, the kind of calm that said, I've already made peace with being erased. Amma entered. The door closed behind her like a held breath. You didn't answer. I thought, if I stayed quiet, maybe it would all go quietly. Amma reached for her hand, didn't squeeze, just held. They don't have a new warrant yet. I filed a motion to block the removal, but they'll do whatever they can before it's read. Isabelle looked down at her bag. I didn't want Marie to see me being taken. Amma understood. This wasn't about pride. It was about not becoming a memory a child has to carry. I'm not letting them take you like this. Amma pulled out her phone, opened a live stream app. The red light turned on. She pointed the camera at Isabelle, a woman with nothing left to hide but still standing tall. This is attorney Amma Nadauer. I'm at Flatbush, Brooklyn, where a court-approved witness, Isabelle Joseph, is being targeted by ICE without new judicial authorization. Any forced removal today may constitute illegal detainment. Over 200 viewers joined in 3 minutes. A human rights group typed into the live chat. We've notified media contacts. Press on the way. Amma handed the phone to Isabelle. She looked straight into the lens, voice low but steady. My name is Isabelle Joseph. I'm not a criminal. I've lived here for 15 years. I've cared for the sick, paid taxes. I gave testimony because I believe a child deserves to stay. If I am taken for that, let the country know it. 7:32 A silver car pulled up. 2 reporters stepped out, cameras rolling. ICE withdrew. No explanation, no apology. Just retreat like a rumor that vanished in daylight. Amma exhaled. Isabelle still held the phone, hands shaking. I thought, if I disappeared, at least Marie would be spared. But now I see. If I disappear quietly, how many others will never be seen? Amma touched her shoulder. Tomorrow, we go to court. Not to plead, but to affirm every life deserves to be named. That morning, the courthouse waiting room was unusually quiet. Isabelle wore a white blouse, sleeves gently folded. Amma carried a slim file, not her usual stack of cases, but just a few sheets, a photograph, and an expired ID card. Julia sat a few rows back. No one from their firm showed up, but others came uninvited, unintroduced. A woman with a baby, a man in a delivery uniform, a teenage girl recording softly, her live stream title reading, "Justice for Isabelle." Nagtua. The hearing began. Judge Moreland peered down at Amma, not warm, not cold, just waiting. Ms. Endor, do you have anything to add before I rule on the witness protection request? Amma rose. She didn't rush to the podium. She took a deep breath, not to calm herself, but to remember who she was speaking for. Your Honor, I won't recite legal codes. We've all heard those. I want to tell a story. Some shifted in their seats. Even IC's Hale paused his scribbling. Amma held up a faded black and white photo. This is a 9-year-old girl named Amma. She's in Dakar's night market, wearing a handwritten school number because she had no government ID. Every day, she pretended to belong to someone else just to avoid being taken. That girl was me. Silence. Amma's voice didn't rise, but it struck. I came to America on a tourist visa, overstayed, cleaned houses, slept in basements. But I studied, I passed. I got into Harvard. I'm not here today to beg the law for forgiveness. I'm here to ask how many will never make it to Harvard, because they never got the chance to be heard. She turned to Isabelle. Isabelle Joseph doesn't have ID, but she has truth. And if this court refuses truth because it doesn't fit a form, then maybe the problem isn't the speaker, it's the form. Judge Moreland paused, then turned to Isabelle. Miss Joseph, do you wish to speak before I rule? She stood, hands slightly trembling, eyes steady. My name is Isabelle Joseph. I was a nurse in Cap Haitian. I came to America not to take, but to flee violence. I never demanded anything. I just lived quietly. But when I saw a child being taken and no one stood up, I couldn't stay quiet. I don't have papers, but I have memory. I have conscience. If that's not enough to stand in court, then let it be known I tried. Silence again. The kind that vibrates with held breath. Then Judge Moreland spoke slowly, clearly. The court grants temporary protection for Miss Isabelle Joseph for 6 months, pending federal identity review. Her testimony in the Dorleant case is admitted. ICE is barred from taking enforcement actions during this period. Amma closed her eyes. Isabelle didn't cry, but she stood taller as if, for the first time, her name had weight. Outside, the rain had stopped. Not sunlight, just a brightness that said the storm had passed. The woman with the baby nodded at Amma. The teenage girl whispered, "They couldn't deport her. She won." Amma said nothing. She just walked beside Isabelle, not in front, not behind. For the first time in 15 years, Isabelle was not a missing name on a file, but a person who had finally been written into the story. 3 days after the hearing. Online. Amma's live stream had surpassed 400,000 views. Progressive news outlets called her a brave attorney. One African publication wrote, "She speaks for the invisible." But at the office, it was a different story. No congratulations, no emails of praise. No one stopped by her desk. Amma still showed up on time, sat at her desk, everything neat, coffee machine humming, papers stacked. But now, even her name felt like an unopened envelope. That evening, Julia invited her to a small jazz bar in Soho. Not their usual place, this one had red lights and low music. Like it was made for farewells no one wanted to name out loud. "Something's off," Julia said after their second drink hit the table. "Jacob called me in for a meeting. Said the firm is reviewing all high-risk public cases." Amma sat straighter. That Harvard Senate hearing instinct came back, that silent alertness of being the uninvited topic in the room. "You mean, they're pushing me out?" "They won't say it. They'll say, we're evaluating direction, or strategic realignment. But you know the game. When a black woman becomes too effective, they start getting uncomfortable." Amma didn't flinch. She just gave that small smile Julia had come to know. The smile of someone who sees betrayal coming, but still shows up for the meeting. "Anyone in our team talking?" "No one will risk it. But one associate texted me, Dominican guy, Luis, said there's internal chatter about re-verifying Amma's immigration background." Amma's grip tightened on her glass. "My background was cleared a decade ago. I'm a citizen. I have my bar card." "I know, but they're not trying to prove you're wrong. They're planting the seed that you might not be right." Amma got home near midnight. Her Harlem apartment, once her sanctuary, now felt too still. She made tea, opened her laptop. Emails flooded in. One from an independent lawyer coalition. "We stand with you." One anonymous. "This isn't Senegal. Don't bring your refugee shit here." Another. "You are the future of this country. Keep going." And one unexpected from a former opposing counsel, 3 years ago. "Call me when you can. There's something I think you should know about your firm." Amma sat still. Her career, her dream, everything she built with her own hands. Now trembling, not because she was wrong, but because she had been too right. Outside, New York didn't sleep, but something inside her had just woken up. If justice needs a voice, the first one who dares to speak is always the one they try to silence first. The next morning, Amma arrived early. Rutherford and Blake. 19th floor. Glass walls. Walnut trim. The smell of slow-drip coffee and fresh court filings. Everything spoke of control, the kind of control that says justice is a luxury you must earn. She passed the conference room. Inside sat Jacob, HR's Karen, and a gray-haired man she didn't recognize. The door was closed, but she didn't need sound to know that meeting was about her. At 10:03, the email came. Subject: internal review notification. Confidential. The firm is conducting a review of attorneys associated with high-profile public cases. Please submit full documentation of personal background, immigration history, and academic records within 72 hours. Amma smirked. Academic records. She was a Harvard Law valedictorian, full scholarship. But now they were rechecking as if her brilliance had expired. Later that day, a call from a private number. A calm, deliberate voice. Amma endured. "This is Vincent Kwan, attorney at Levy & Strauss. We opposed each other in Martinez v. Bronx, 2020. Amma remembered him. Vincent, Chinese-American. Extremely private. Always professional. Not a friend, but never disrespectful. I just left a regional partner meeting. Your name came up. There's a leak from your office. They're not just planning to let you go, they're looking to flag your bar status. Someone's digging into your original USCIS records. Amma went cold. Thanks for the call. I'm not doing this out of kindness. I've seen too many good lawyers destroyed, not for breaking the law, but for making the system look in the mirror. Should I go public? Prepare first. Someone in your firm accessed internal HR logs from your first year. There's a note saying, monitor and dour possible entry irregularity. It's baseless. There's no proof. They don't need proof, just doubt. She hung up. Looked out over the city. The Statue of Liberty blurred by smog. She remembered JFK Airport. Tourist visa folded tight in her palm. The way the immigration officer skimmed her name like it was an error in the system. 1 hour later, Julia stepped into her office. There's news. What now? A group of young immigration lawyers not from our firm. They're organizing a panel on justice and migration. They want you as the keynote speaker. Do they know I'm under investigation? That's why they want you. Amma stayed silent. Julia added gently. They'll try to take everything. Amma, your desk, your bar number. But there's one thing they only get if you hand it over your voice. Amma looked at the nameplate on her desk. Amma Nador. A name once struck from records. Now, a name the system was trying to erase again. She nodded. I'll speak. And if they fire me, I'll release every page they fear. Julia smiled. Then they better start sweating. The panel took place in a small lecture hall at Brooklyn Community College. No fancy stage, no national press, just 70 people, mostly law students, a few immigration advocates, some independent lawyers, and 3 former ICE agents who had since resigned. Amma arrived early. No suit. She wore a white blouse, wide beige slacks, hair tied back, not to appear soft, but to remind herself she wasn't here to argue. She was here to testify. The moderator, a Somali-American student named Yasmin, introduced her gently. Today we welcome someone who isn't just a lawyer, but proof that the law and justice don't always walk together, and that some people refuse to let them part. Amma stepped up. No spotlight, but enough light to see her scan the room like she was looking for herself years ago. My name is Amma Nador. Her voice steady. I'm an immigration attorney. I worked at a prestigious firm. I'm currently under investigation for defending a witness without legal status. No gasps, just listening. I was born in Senegal. My mother sold vegetables. At 9, I had no birth certificate, no school. I taught myself under streetlights, wrote my name on notebooks like a prayer. I exist. I came here on a tourist visa, overstayed. I cleaned houses, slept in basements, but I passed. I got into Harvard Law. Still no sound, but the room leaned in. I'm not telling this for pity. I'm telling this to ask how many like me have disappeared, simply because no one ever wrote their names down. She lowered her voice. Last week, I represented Isabelle Joseph undocumented for 15 years, a nurse for the elderly, invisible in every database. When she stood up for a child, the system called it illegal. They tried to erase her. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know this. There is something more sacred than a desk, a paycheck, or a license. The right to be seen, the right to say your name, the right to stand and declare, I am here, and what I see is wrong. Applause, gentle at first, then growing. One man stood Vincent Kwan. Amma, if they push you out, I offer you the lead counsel role in our new immigrant justice collective. No big salary, no glass offices, but freedom and community. Amma didn't respond right away. She just nodded. No system is strong enough to silence a voice that has decided it will not be quiet anymore. The first to clap was not a student, but an old man in a janitor's coat. No one knew when he'd arrived. But he clapped like he'd waited his whole life to hear someone like Amma finally speak. Amma returned to Rutherford and Blake on Monday morning. Not to explain herself, not to submit more documents, but to gather what was hers by hand and on her own terms. No one stopped her at the door. No security guard asked for her badge. They simply didn't look at her, as if they had silently agreed in a private meeting. If we act like she was never here, maybe we don't have to admit she outgrew us. Her office looked exactly the same. The ergonomic chair she bought with her own money. The small photo frame of her mother smiling beside a hibiscus bush. A slanted copy of James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. An unwashed tea mug. Amma packed everything in 23 minutes. Not hurried, not slow. Just like someone clearing away an offering, not loudly, but reverently. On her way out, she passed the front desk. Ellen, the white receptionist, looked up, uneasy. She once asked Amma for help reviewing her Argentine boyfriend's visa case. Ellen opened her mouth as if to say something, then stayed quiet. Amma nodded gently. A goodbye, or maybe an acknowledgement. Not everyone betrayed her, but not everyone had the courage to speak when the truth came from someone who didn't look like them. She entered the elevator. The mirrored wall reflected her, a black woman, hair pulled back, holding a small box and a case folder marked Isabelle Joseph. Mirrors don't lie. And in that reflection, she saw someone who hadn't lost, not fired, not broken, but someone who had walked away from a decaying structure to begin building something new. At the lobby, the doors opened. Standing there was Vincent Kwan. No signage, no speeches, just presence on time and place. Amma stepped out. He nodded. Ready. Amma didn't answer right away. She looked at the New York street, busy, indifferent, but full of rebirth. Ready, she said, and this time, I won't walk alone. 3 days after leaving the firm, Amma and Vincent opened their independent office. A third-floor walk-up in a red brick building in Bed-Stuy, no logo, no signboard, but with natural light, a good kettle, and 3 mismatched chairs. The name was Simple Voice, voices of immigration, community, and equity. That afternoon, Isabelle arrived. Gray sweater, hair tied up, worn shoes cleaned carefully. She carried a canvas bag and a folder wrapped in old newspaper. Amma made tea. They sat across from each other. No small talk, no pleasantries. Isabelle opened the folder. Inside were all the documents she'd kept, vaccination cards from children she'd cared for, a thank you letter from an elderly man who passed away after a stroke, and a handwritten statement in French, unread by anyone. I was planning to leave the this weekend, Isabelle said. Plane tickets booked. Someone will meet me in Haiti. But last night, I dreamed of Marie. Amma didn't interrupt. Isabelle continued. She stood in that old kitchen, yellow backpack on, red lollipop in hand. She asked me if everyone leaves, who will tell the truth. A silence as soft as breath. Isabelle clenched her hands, eyes steady on Amma. I'm staying. I want to train to become a witness support advocate. Not out of gratitude, but because for the first time in 15 years, someone said my name with belief in it. Amma was moved, but didn't cry. She stood, pulled out a blank form from the shelf, Community Legal Liaison, application form. I never believed the system would protect everyone, Amma said quietly. But if enough people like you exist, maybe it won't silence everyone either. Isabelle picked up the pen. Her hand trembled not from fear, but because it had been so long since she signed something she chose herself. Her name appeared on the paper, Isabelle Joseph. No longer just a witness, no longer just a case, but a person rewriting her own role in ink and in public. City Hall, hearing room 6. Not large, 6 rows of seats, a row of microphones, and an old, crackling sound system. But today, it was filled to capacity. Presiding was a local councilwoman, brown-skinned, Honduran-born, once a refugee child in Texas. She demanded the session be live-streamed and its transcript distributed to legal networks nationwide. Topic: Reevaluating identity verification protocols for undocumented witnesses. Amma sat front row, black blazer, voice pin on her lapel. Isabelle sat beside her, not behind, not in the monitored witness chair, but as part of the legal team. Vincent presented first concise, surgical. He cited legal precedents, exposed how Addendum 710-2CB had morphed into a quiet weapon of exclusion. Then Amma stood. She held the mic, her voice calm but no longer the voice of someone asking to be heard. This time, it was the voice of someone clearing space for others to speak. We are not against verification. We are against how verification has become code for disappearance. A loophole. A tool to question presence only when that presence is black. Immigrant. Undocumented. Then Isabelle rose. No script, no notes. My name is Isabelle Joseph. I came to the U.S. at 22. Not to hide. To work. I changed diapers for Alzheimer's patients, fed elders who couldn't chew, and held the children of others when their mothers were deported. I once thought I had no voice, but now I know a voice isn't something someone gives you. It's what you hold on to after nearly everything else has been taken. The room went still, not for lack of disagreement, but because no one could interrupt what had just been made undeniable. The hearing ended at 4:17 p.m. Outside, the sky had cooled, but no one felt cold. Law students waited outside, asking Amma to speak at their campuses. A man, former ICE employee, approached Isabelle. I once did things I regret, but today, you helped me believe I can do something right with what I know. Isabelle didn't answer. She simply nodded. Amma looked back at the city building. The first time I came here, I was defending a witness the system called invalid. Vincent stepped beside her, smiling. Today, you're back. Not as an advocate, as someone redefining what valid even means. And the story ends not with a loud victory, but with a recalibration. The system didn't collapse, but it trembled, not from a scream, but from a voice that refused to disappear. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher, one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.